Situation Recap Report and Resolution June 21, 2019 by Anna von Reitz. The two remaining branches of the original federal government are playing war games on our shores in contravention of their duties and contractual obligations. They are secretively preying upon Americans via various means of fraud which they have attempted to excuse by deliberately engaging in the following actions: 1. Falsification of records, 2. Identity theft, 3. Secretive unilateral contracting processes serving to confer opposing citizenship obligations, so that Americans are presumed to be both territorial United States citizens and municipal citizens of the United States, when in fact they are neither. 4. Confiscation of assets based on a phony interpretation of the Trading with the Enemy Act. 5. Holding of assets based on a phony interpretation of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's first inaugural address. 6. Misdirection and corruption of the judicial branches of the respective territorial and municipal government corporations to secure enforcement for all the above crock of horse hooey. So, it is apparent to us, and it should be apparent to everyone reading this, that the entire country has been run amok by two competing commercial corporations, both of which are operating as crime syndicates in gross violation of their treaty and commercial contract obligations. It should also be apparent that their criminality is orchestrated and purposeful, and that they have colluded together to produce a single desired result: the rape and pillaging of the American states and people that they are all sworn to protect and defend, and the avoidance of the limitations of the constitutional agreements that permit the existence of these corporations and their presence on our shores. The duty which the Roman Curia owes the entire world is to prevent this kind of thing from happening and to promptly liquidate any corporation caught engaging in unlawful activity. They created all these corporate entities, thought them up out of thin air and gave them form, they thus remain responsible for them. So, they shuffled off the assets of the municipal corporation doing business as the United States, Inc., left the victims on the hook as presumed co-signers of its debts, and allowed the same perpetrators to boot up numerous new corporations which have offered to continue on with business as usual, promoting the same frauds, and operating in the same way as the United States, Inc. The IRS, for example, simply moved its headquarters from Puerto Rico to the Northern Mariana Islands, and snugged down, ready to continue on beating and fleecing Americans under the same false presumptions of municipal citizenship and under the same old tired excuse of relocating the municipal persons to a United States Commonwealth where they can be prosecuted under the Spanish law of the Inquisition. Their remedy has fallen far short of what the victims of this perfidy are owed, and thus far presents nothing but another fraud and another con game that obeys the letter, but not the spirit or intent of the ecclesiastical law, and which immediately engages the new corporations in the sins of their predecessors, all without any relief to the victims of these crimes who are in fact the priority creditors of these corporations. They have also failed to liquidate the holdings of Her Royal Majesty, the British Territorial Government, and those of the Lord Mayor of London and the Government of Westminster, all of which have exercised the privilege of issuing incorporation charters and allowed the resulting corporations to operate as crime syndicates. By international agreement, the Pope retains the ability to liquidate these monstrosities as well, and owes it to the American states and people to do so without further ado. The territorial and municipal corporations have all trespassed in a criminal and coordinated fashion and committed capital crimes against their employers, the American states and people. They deserve to be liquidated and all their assets returned to their priority creditors, the same American states and people who have been harmed and victimized by these crimes. Our agreements with the Pope, Her Majesty, and Westminster are very clear and do not allow such breach of trust and legal chicanery. Mr. Trump and his administration have been and are being fully informed regarding these issues, and all parties concerned worldwide are being called upon to put an end to these outrages and return the purloined property to the rightful owners. This is nothing more or less than the exercise of international and commercial law and its requirements, well agreed upon for hundreds of years. The claim that hundreds of millions of Americans have voluntarily and knowingly embarked on careers as British merchant marine warrant officers is ludicrous. The claim that we are missing, presumed dead, is equally ludicrous. We have been deliberately scammed, misinformed, defrauded by dishonest employees, have suffered identity theft, have been robbed, pillaged and plundered by mercenary pirates, and in all ways abused in bad faith by the popes and the British monarchs and the Lord Mayors of Westminster, who have pretended to be our friends and allies, and who have instead acted in gross breach of trust and violation of commercial contract obligations that we are clearly owed. Giving their own lackeys our property is not relief nor is it remedy for this circumstance, and any continued pretension that it is, will be met with instantaneous rebuttal. Creating a revolving door where one corporation is shut down for criminal activity and another corporation operated under a slightly different name or with a different headquarters is allowed to resume the same criminal activity, is not an answer. We insist that the American states and people be fully recognized and their political status be honored. We insist that our property be returned to us free and clear and unencumbered by foreign debt. We insist that all right, title, and interest naturally belonging to us be returned to us. We insist that our employees cease and desist all false claims and false citizenship presumptions and render good faith service instead. We can read the historical record, the territorial code, and the municipal code for what it actually says. We are not confused by doublespeak. We are not confused about the identity, function, or administration of either the United States nor the United States of America and their relationship to the United States and the United States of America, respectively. If the Pope and the Queen and the Lord Mayor expect us to honor our obligations under the constitutional agreements and the international law, they must also honor theirs, and not via some oblique mockery of substituting one criminally misdirected commercial corporation for another criminally misdirected commercial corporation with the intention of continuing to promote crime against the American states and people. We wish the Internal Revenue Service and the IRS to be completely and permanently reformed. We wish for these organizations to be redirected and enabled to modernize their delivery of credit that is owed to the American states and people via application of our exemptions and mutual offset credit exchanges we are owed. We deny the Territorial United States Congress and the Municipal United States Congress any ability to pass flat taxes or sales taxes for us, and we deny their franchise operations any ability to pass or enforce property taxes on our private property assets, which are all due return and revenue. A grotesque and profound breach of trust and international law has occurred here, and no succor can be afforded to the guilty parties on the basis of any law of necessity or the existence of any war powers exercised on our behalf to justify our destruction. We have our own recourse to the law of necessity, and as a sovereign government, we have the lawful ability to enforce the public law upon all and any perpetrators and promoters of these crimes on our shores. Resolution 1. The national credit owed to the American states and people must be made available to them, and their public and private property assets must be lawfully conveyed and officially revenued without recourse to any presumptions otherwise. 2. Peace must be declared with respect to the land and soil of our country, and peace between the territorial and municipal United States while operating on our shores or in our territories and insular possessions must also be maintained. We are not putting up with any more pretensions of commercial warfare on our shores, in our territories, or in our insular possessions. This country has been at peace since 1814, and for everyone's sake, it is best that it remain so. 3. All federal service providers and all federal franchise states of states and agency subcontractors must be brought into alignment and compliance with the respective constitutions and service agreements owed to the American states and people, together with their guarantees and limitations, without delay. 4. The conscription apparatus put in place by the British territorial government to entrap and arbitrarily confer territorial United States citizenship on Americans must be dismantled and subscribed to the dustbin of history. This includes all registration of births and all retention of all false claims based upon such registrations. The registration and securitization of living flesh using the pretense of non-existent citizenship obligations is forbidden by both international law and scripture and has no place in America. 5. The corollary apparatus put in place by the municipal United States government used to create bogus cestuique vi trusts and public transmitting utilities and public charitable trust accounts must also be reformed. Hundreds of millions of innocent people have suffered probate fraud as a result of these activities, and a mighty correction is long overdue. 6. No foreign government is allowed nor entitled to confer citizenship upon anyone born in the States of the Union, and no pretense or excuse may be offered for this circumstance in which the hired help have deliberately mischaracterized and misidentified Americans as either species of federal employee or dependents or U.S. franchise corporations and sought to entrap and persecute their employers in gross breach of trust. 7. The foreign governments responsible for this circumstance have employed fraud of various species throughout this process of misrepresentation and entrapment, and both bankruptcy and probate fraud upon the courts has been employed. As fraud vitiates everything tainted by it, we exercise our natural and unalienable rights and our law of necessity to invoke the public law and the law of the land owed to this country, and we invoke the grandfather clause of all acts of Congress since 1861, declaring ourselves free of any taint or obligation or crime committed by these foreign political lobbies deceitfully operating in our names.